Welcome to the Steelers by the Lake podcast. My name is James Strong, joined by a couple special guests this morning who you're probably going to see a little bit more regularly than you have in the past. If you've been around us for a while, you have seen plenty of Nick Pretzel's beautiful face in the morning. And then, of course, our once in a while special guest, Jill from Ohio.
Jill from Ohio.
Jill from Ohio. Wonderful to see both of you this morning. How are each of you this day?
James, I am chilly. I am awake. I am awake, alive, alert, enthusiastic. So we are ready to go.
Woo, all the things.
I'm awake, James. How are you this morning?
I'm good to go, man. My dogs are barking upstairs. I'm ready to talk Steelers football. We are going to get a 53-man roster prediction for all of you this morning. Unfortunately, Cody was unable to join us, so Nick is nice enough to slap a 53-man prediction together for us, and we're going to do that this morning. But the big news of the day, right? We've got a new starting quarterback in Pittsburgh, and he's got four NFL MVP awards sitting in his closet. How do you guys feel about Aaron Rodgers finally officially being a Pittsburgh Steeler?
I'm just glad it's finally done at this point. Like waking up every day looking like, is he actually signing? Is he doing it? Are we moving forward now? Like just to know what direction we're going. Now to make predictions from the season. That's how I feel about it.
There are three ways I see this playing out. The first is that he has a bit of a return to his old self, no longer having to deal with Nathaniel Hackett and being under the direction of Mike Tomlin. I think will be a great benefit to his play, and I think we'll see a definite uptick from his numbers last year. That being said, there's always the possibility of the Steelers doing the wonderful old just making it to 500 and the first round playoff exit and seeing how that goes. And then there's the other case of he does the exact same thing he did with Nathaniel Hackett and Rodgers is washed, and then we have good draft capital next year. So the one thing that scares me is that inevitable potential of the Steelers being right there at 500 and leaving and then getting that mid-round pick. But I also like the possibility of Rodgers being able to mentor Howard, which you never know. Maybe he becomes the guy next year and he can be the Steelers' future moving forward. And then we can take another, as we were kind of discussing pre-show, depth piece for the future who can then learn and be a starter and not have to necessarily worry about going after a quarterback next year. I don't know that that's going to be the case. I don't think that Pittsburgh is going to trust on that panning out, but it would be a very nice scenario if it did. So like Jill, I'm happy it's over and that we have clarity on who those guys are going into camp, because Pittsburgh usually takes four, and if it wasn't Rodgers, I don't know who it would be, and I don't like any of the outcomes. So
I'm with you guys on this. I was all along, anyone that's been listening, watching the show, I've been saying it was going to happen. It wasn't going to happen before the draft. He wasn't going to come for the voluntary OTAs. This is about when it was expected to finally happen. It sounds like he got a little bit of pressure from the Rooneys, from Mike Tomlin. Hey, we really kind of need you here now that mandatory mini camps are starting next week. So he said, no problem, I'll be there. It'll be interesting if we ever find out if that's why DK Metcalf was not at OTAs, because he was at some private sessions with Rodgers maybe this whole time. We'll find out, and maybe we won't find out at all. But to me, probably the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to on this is the last few years. One of the things that's really been missing from the offense is throwing the football over the middle of the field. Having a quarterback who is confident doing it, is very well versed in reading defenses, knows exactly what he's looking at, and is tall enough to see over the offensive line. That's kind of important too. So we finally have that. Is he what he used to be? Absolutely not. There's no arguing that. But I think that Aaron can bring just enough that in those games, in those moments where you're not really sure, is Pittsburgh going to be able to pull this one out or not? you have to look at his experience and resume and his ability to read the defenses and say, you always have a chance. So I like this to add another 1 or 2 regular season wins and really give them a shot in the playoffs, assuming they can do well enough in the regular season to not land themselves in a juggernaut first round against the Chiefs, Bills, or Ravens. And that seems to be the most difficult part, is either you need to win the division so you can play a wild card team in the first round for once, or at least get to that number 5 seed so you can get the least strongest division winner, which should be out of the AFC South as it normally is. So I'm excited it's over too, guys. There's no doubt about that. I was kind of overhearing it and like people asking me over and over and over and over and over and having to talk about it all nonstop. He's the guy now, and Corliss Waitman's a little bit richer, right?
Yep. We're in number 8.
Yeah, got that number 8 off of Corliss Waitman, and I don't know how much he made, but that might have been a real nice payday for Corliss.
Well, and hey, maybe
Absolutely.
with this Aaron Rodgers signing, we might actually see some utilization of a tight end. Maybe.
Absolutely should. Absolutely should. He's
should.
known to distribute the ball everywhere. I mean, he threw for almost 4,000 yards last year.
Yeah.
So as much as he is nowhere near what he used to be, he still almost threw 30 touchdowns, had almost 4,000 yards passing and 11 picks to go with it. But when you have almost 30 touchdowns, I'm not mad about a 3-1.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think there's some things to be optimistic about. We should absolutely be concerned about him not being what he was at one point in time, but the options are gone, right?
Yes.
I didn't want them to do this whole Kirk thing, man.
Yep.
God, no.
That's
no.
What a mess that is. His last 5 starts of the season, he had 1 touchdown and 9 interceptions. You cannot expect anything from Kirk Cousins at this stage of his career.
And not to mention having to pick up his contract either, something that would have been a nightmare because Atlanta paid him good money to have him be backing up Michael Penix.
Yeah.
And also, to your point, James, 2 of those interceptions from Rodgers came from Beanie Bishop, so he doesn't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah.
So unless it's in practice, of course. But we definitely, I think we'll see improvement from Rodgers from the fact that he's got better coaching around him now, and that he's got some chemistry with DK going into the season to kind of have that bit of I know what I'm working with at least my wide receiver 1. And now that he's going to be at the mandatory mini camp, he can start working on some of that with some of the other guys too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be surprised if he doesn't go to Darnell Washington a lot in the red zone. I'll be very surprised. That's a cheat code for any quarterback.
Literally.
Yeah. And I think Aaron Rodgers is finally a guy smart enough to take advantage of something like that, even if it's just to stat or pad his own stats. In the end, we want him to pad his stats as a Steelers quarterback. Mm-hmm. So I'm on board with that. Before we get into other topics here, do either one of you have anything else you really want to talk about with Aaron Rodgers? I don't want to move on if you got more. No. All right, cool. So we always talk about the month previous as the Steelers by the Lake podcast when we do the first one of the new month. We missed that last week, which was technically the first, so we're going to go over that real quick. Our top downloading states from last month. California was number 1. Yeah, big turnout from California. Pennsylvania squeaked in at number 2. Florida was right behind them. And then Ohio was bringing up the rear. I actually wrote down Florida twice. What a dummy. So I'm going to go over the countries while I pull up the states here so that I can get you an accurate list since I goofed that up there. Top states or top countries last month. Of course, the United States came in at number 1. Canada, number 2. The Ukraine was number 3. Spain, number 4. And then we had a 3-way tie for 5th place with the UK, Hungary, and the Netherlands. So pretty neat to see all those different countries coming in. Last month was a huge month for us as far as international downloads. So very neat to see all this and welcome all of you to our new family. As we're expanding in hosts, we're expanding in listeners too. So a fun thing to see. And where I goofed up, it looks like was Nebraska was the other one in in the top 5 there in the States. So
I'm curious to see what the Dublin game will do for the viewership, to see if we get some more Ireland downloads there.
there's a chance of it, man. I'm looking forward to it. That'll be fun right there, man.
Oh, yeah.
I lived in Ireland for a little bit in college. I student taught there, and the fan base is there for the Steelers. Like
Nice.
it's there. So I'm excited. I'm trying to go to that game.
Very cool. Did you find any Steelers bars in Ireland while you were there?
I did, and I actually we signed it was like an NFL bar, and we all signed a terrible towel and hung it up on the wall. And then I went back because that was back in 2014,
Okay.
and then I went back in 2022, and it's still hanging up on the wall.
Nice.
That's awesome.
So
Very cool. Very, very cool. And not as exciting news for Pittsburgh. They had their first major injury of the offseason with tight end Donald Parham Jr. tearing his Achilles. You hate to hear it. You had high hopes that he could be a contributor and a field stretcher in the middle of the field with his 6'8" frame. Unfortunately, he should be missing at least this upcoming season. He was only a 1-year deal with Pittsburgh, so we'll see if they try to retain him for next season. But unfortunately, his 2025 is over before it got a chance to start. Big ouch.
yeah, you hate to hear that.
Yeah. It screws up my 53-man prediction. I had him on it last week.
That's true.
That's the end of. So I'm definitely gonna have a different one for my second one when we get closer to the season start.
Well, I was gonna say that's what we get when we do 53-man roster now.
Yep, that's why it was the way too early, right? So beyond that, we did make some moves in the secondary on the roster here. Defensive back Josh Bledsoe was released, and in his place, safety Quindell Johnson was added. I feel like this was probably semi-related to the Ryan Watts retirement because they never really made a move directly after that. So I wouldn't expect this name to really make a big splash. Probably not going to be on Nick's 53-man roster prediction.
might be some good foreshadowing there, James. Who could say?
And then our last topic before getting into Nick's prediction here, Gabe Davis came in for a visit, former star wide receiver of the Buffalo Bills, and then he was playing somewhere else last year where he didn't have as much of an impact.
Jacksonville, I believe.
Jacksonville, yeah. He only had like 20 or 21 catches or something last year, apparently coming off of a meniscus injury. How do you guys feel about Gabe Davis possibly once he's all healed up? Because he didn't get a contract while he was in town, but it sounds like he's also not fully healed from that meniscus injury quite yet.
Yeah, he went to a couple of teams for visits because he was drawing interest, and I believe the common theme was that he was not passing the physical due to that lingering and nagging injury. I don't dislike the move at all. It's going to be hard, especially looking at both your prediction and mine, to find a spot for him in that wide receiver room. Mostly because you would hate to see some of the younger guys who haven't really gotten a full shot get that shot. I feel like Robert Woods was kind of brought in to fill the role that Gabe Davis would have fulfilled in this offense. And also you need to have people to be able to contribute on special teams. I don't know that you're throwing Gabe Davis out there on those plays. So that kind of gives a little bit of a insight into what I'm going to be doing with my 53. But definitely not convinced that it's the right move. But I wouldn't mind having him on the team. He's a guy who can contribute. He's proven that. He's a veteran presence to have amongst some of those younger guys. So it wouldn't make me too upset. I just don't know how you fit him in.
That's kind of my thought as well. Like, it's nice to have that veteran with those younger guys, but at the same time, like, I want to see more from our wide receiver room. And so I just don't know how he would fit in. So I don't hate it, but I'm not like, wow, yes, we've got to get him, you know?
I'm not too dissimilar in opinion from you guys on this one. I feel like if they were to make the move, then Bobby Trees should be looking over his shoulder and wondering what's going on with my roster spot. Because one thing that Gabe Davis is known for, other than his ability to stretch the field and catch those deep balls with his size and speed. This is blocking. Is very good blocking wide receiver. And that's pretty much what it seems like the reason that Robert Woods was brought in. So you wouldn't really expect the need for both of them, because then you're going to push some back of the roster guys either off or into a situation where they're not even active on Sundays, and I wouldn't really care for that move. But Pittsburgh has a habit of going out and getting guys that had big games against them. And a couple of years ago, Gabe Davis torched us for almost 200 yards receiving, and I want to say it was 2 or 3 touchdowns in that game. So I could definitely see this still happening once he's healthy enough to be able to pass the physical. So this might be something we revisit in a few weeks here once that knee's a little bit healthier for him. Meniscus injuries can be nagging. If you don't get that cleaned up surgically, that's something that can cause a lot of discomfort and a lot of swelling, which then really affects your range of motion and mobility. As someone who's had 2 meniscus surgeries over the years on the same knee, I understand what that can do to you for a normal person, not even close to what an actual professional athlete goes through. So I'm sure that's quite an issue for him at this stage.
Do we know when he had surgery?
No, honestly, I didn't even hear if he did or not.
Okay, so
I assume he did, because the only way a meniscus gets better is if you get in there and clean up the torn parts and cut them off. It's like having like a frayed edge to like a mattress or a shirt or something. You cut off all the torn parts and now it's better. So your meniscus becomes smaller every time you have a meniscus repair.
oh, all right.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah, I probably don't have much of mine left at this stage, but on to the meat and potatoes. It's time for that. Nick, I want to thank you very much for stepping up to the plate and doing a 53-man roster prediction for us this morning. We'll try not to beat you up too bad about your prediction, but I got a feeling I'm going to like a lot of it anyway. So without further ado, Nick, who you got making this 2025 Pittsburgh Steelers roster?
Absolutely. We'll start with the offense. And as James mentioned, this was indeed thrown together this morning. It was unfortunate that our good friend and usual co-host Cody could not join us. But we were originally thinking that he might be able to. And so I didn't know I was going to be doing this until about 45 minutes ago. So it's here. It's rough, but it's here. Starting off with the quarterback room, I don't think there's going to be any surprises here. As one of the people that I follow called him, we've got Aaron Renegade Rodgers at the starting quarterback position. We've got Rudolph, who saved Christmas against the Bengals a couple of years ago, backing us up at number 2 quarterback. And then a nickname that I've come up with for our third string that I have projected that he's going to have to earn, obviously, but Will Howitzer Howard. We're hoping he can bring that arm in and show us some potential for the future. So those are my 3 quarterbacks. I know Pittsburgh's got 4 on the roster going into training camp. That's typical. Usually you don't see him keep more than 3. So that's where I've got my quarterback room. Moving on to running backs. I don't think there will be too many surprises here. I'm going with 3 here as well. I've got Jaylen Warren, Caleb Johnson, and Kenny Gainwell. Kenny Gainwell for a little bit of that kickoff versatility, especially with kickoffs becoming a bit more meaningful now that I believe it goes out to the 35 if there's a touchback, which was recently approved, I believe, in the NFL owners meeting. And with Gainwell having, as we were just talking about with Gabe Davis, burned us pretty good in our game against Philadelphia last year, and having the kickoff versatility there, I think that frees up Calvin Austin to maybe not take some work there if we don't need him to, and then he can focus on doing more of the receiver tools and things like that. So that's why I had Gainwell as my third. Kicking our good friend of the show, Noah Wager's good old quarter pounder Patterson off the list here. But I'm pretty happy with that running back room as it stands in my current projections. Moving on to wide receiver, Obviously, DK Metcalf. I've got Robert Woods at the present moment as the number 2, and then Calvin Austin as the number 3 guy working the slot. Because Robert Woods does have some of that outside experience throughout his career. And then for the backup wide receivers, I'm only keeping 2 more because keeping 6 was just too hard. I've got Roman Wilson, giving him an opportunity to get a shot at doing some things here, hopefully switching in and out with Calvin to give them a little bit of a breather, kind of when one gets winded or takes a big hit, get the other one in there for a play or two, give him a little break. And then Ben Skoranek for his ability on special teams, and as a product of the fact that they gave him a relatively large contract for where he sits on the roster. And I don't see them moving on from him for the Scotty Millers or the Rock Taylors or the Krosky Merritts of the world. So we will hopefully see some special teams, special plays, special players, and Danny Smith with his big wad of gum. I see Skoranek making that roster because of that. Tight end, I'm keeping 3. I've got obviously Muth and Darnell Washington, and then a guy that I think will put a smile on James's face. I got DJ Thomas Jones on there as well. Technically, you could say I have a 4th because I've also got Connor Hayward on the roster in the fullback position, technically listed on the roster. And then to round out the offensive line, just kind of breeze through the offense and then get some thoughts from the 2 of you here. Starting, I've got left tackle Broderick Jones, left guard Isaac Siamalu, center Zach Frazier, right guard Mason McCormick, and right tackle Troy Fautanu. Backing them up in the same order of position with some versatility in case somebody goes down and you might want to plug one guy in a different spot. I've got a full list of backups here, which is a slight different from what James had. I've got Calvin Anderson, Spencer Anderson, Ryan McCollum, Max Sharping, and Dylan Cook.
Trying to keep track of everything.
Yeah, I wrote it all down just to make it easier
the
later on.
I see the cog wheels spinning in James's mind as he's going over my predictions here.
Very good. No, your backups again. I'm 1 short. Calvin Anderson, Spencer Anderson, Dylan Cook, Ryan McCollum. You had 1 more guy.
Sharping.
Max Sharping.
Okay, cool. Very cool. So my first question for you is: had the Dylan Parham injury not happened, would that have changed who you kept in the tight end and fullback room?
It definitely could have. It definitely would have made it a harder decision. I would have probably kept 4 tight ends because I believe Parham is listed as a tight end, but he has the ability to play at fullback. When I was going over the roster, they had Connor Hayward in that fullback position, which is why I listed him there as opposed to technically a tight end, even though he has the versatility of both as well. I just don't like as much of what I've seen out of Connor Hayward recently. And who knows, maybe preseason having the Donald Parham in the room pushes him to be better, and then he makes the roster still. So it's a hard hypothetical to go with because I would have probably, and I mean, obviously going off of it today, we wouldn't have the preseason to have gone with anyway, but it would have made me consider for sure not keeping Connor Hayward, especially because he's more sort of what we've been used to seeing. And sometimes it doesn't work out. So sometimes, at least in my inclination, the new fresh blood who you've seen work out in other systems can kind of have the edge over there. So probably would have changed my opinion if he was still available to us. But seeing as he's not, I would have probably have given him the edge over Hayward at this point in the preseason. Or the off season, rather.
Sure. Jill, did you have any questions for him? Any critiques? Anything you would do different?
No, I have the same opinion about Connor Hayward. I'm concerned about what I think he's going to actually be able to do this year, just based off of last year and how it was just not consistent, you know? And so the injury to Donald there was rough because that's who, if in my mock that I've been working on, that's who I took.
Yeah.
So
I'll tell you a name that I would suggest people keep an eye on this preseason is going to be J.J. Galbraith, a pure receiving tight end that was one of the undrafted guys that they brought in at the same time as DJ Thomas Jones. With the quarterback room looking a little bit more skilled now with Aaron Rodgers in there, I expect some of these guys to get some real opportunities in the preseason games, and he might turn some heads. So I'm excited to see where that goes. But also excited to see who you've got on your defensive side of the roster here, Nick. So let's start off with your defensive line, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So defense was hard, very hard, because we have a lot of depth that is exciting, and there's some depth that's young. And it's hard to see which guys they're going to keep and which guys they're going to potentially move on from. And having kept one more person on my offensive side of the ball than you did, James, made that even harder. But going with the defensive line here, I've got the obvious Derek Harmon. We've got Keanu Benton at nose tackle. We've got Cam Hayward. We've got TJ Watt, and we've got Alex Highsmith, if you want to get into the outside linebackers there as a part of the line. Backing them up, I've got Isaiah Loudermilk, Y.A. Black, Daniel Aquale, Nate Herbig, and Jack Sawyer is my list on the line there. Then in terms of the other linebackers, I've got Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson in the starting positions. And then I've got Cole Holcomb and Malik Harrison as the backups there. Happy to see Holcomb removed from that injury. There was some buzz going around that he might have been potentially ready for the playoff game, but he was advised. He was willing and ready to go for the game if they asked him to, but they said, no, we'd rather have you focus on that recovery. So love to see that drive from him, the willingness to compete and rehab and work towards getting back to being able to be a part of the team. Love that from him. And glad to have him back. Hopefully he's able to contribute in a big way this year, because I loved what I saw out of him before he went down with that injury, and was very sad to see him sidelined with that. Then in the secondary, I've got Darius Slay, Deshaun Elliott, Minka Fitzpatrick, Joey Porter Jr., and Beanie Bishop in our starting positions. And then backing them up, I've got Corey Trice, Miles Killebrew, Juan Thornhill, James Pierre, Brandon Eccles, and the rookie Dante Kent. And James, I know you're trying to jot it all down there, and I'm just kind of breezing down through. So any guys you need me to repeat, I'm more than happy to do so that we can discuss.
Yes, on your defensive line, I was trying to keep it separate, outside linebackers and line on my note side of things.
Sure.
So I got your Cam Hayward, Keanu Benton, Derek Harmon, Isaiah Loudermilk, Y.A. Black, and you had, I think, one more defensive lineman?
Yes, Daniel Aquale.
Aquale, okay. Smart move in my book.
Yeah, I was sad to see Logan Lee not make the list. Also, Dean Lowry being moved on from. But being able to keep Julius Welshoff on that exemption for being an international player is a huge win. To be able to keep a guy like that as an added guy. But just can't keep too many when you keep more on the offense. And with how common injuries, excuse me, to the offensive line can be, I figured it was good to have another guy in that room just to provide that backup role.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, if you had one person you were going to change about this, was there anyone that was like, this is the most painful person to leave off, or maybe even a couple of guys?
For me, the most painful one was definitely Logan Lee. He was the guy that I mocked to us previously, and I enjoyed watching what little we get to see of him, mostly in the preseason. But I really do like him. He's just a good guy, and I enjoy watching him play. But also not getting to give Carson Bruner the opportunity to make the roster. Seeing as his dad was with us, Pittsburgh and I both love seeing the families stay in the building. So not getting him a chance to make the roster was very upsetting. And just because you gave me the opportunity to say a couple of guys, I'm going to throw one more in there.
Sure.
Sebastian Castro, the undrafted free agent, is a guy that you're very high on and that I thought deserved to go drafted. But we were lucky enough to bring in undrafted. So hopefully some of those guys make the practice squad and don't get scooped up by other teams. But I just couldn't find a spot for them on the 53, which is a great problem to have when you're like, oh man, I wish I could keep these guys on the roster, but putting 25 on offense and 25 on defense is a tall task sometimes. So it is what it is for those guys, and I don't think they're bad players, but sometimes you just don't have the room.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that if the NFL goes to an 18-game schedule, which I think is kind of inevitable at some point in time, that they'll also expand the rosters to at least 55, because you're just going to have more injuries as the season goes along. And I think it makes a lot of sense to add a few more depth guys per team. And I think Pittsburgh would easily be able to add some guys that are currently on the 90 that are good enough to be on a 53. There's just not enough spots. Joe, what would you do different about this? Was there anything that was highly offensive that Nick did to you?
No, nothing highly offensive. I just really hope in my heart of hearts that Corey Trice Jr. can stay healthy this season, because I would love to see what he could do with us, and what he can do on the field. But I mean, he's just had a tough luck with injuries the past 2 seasons. So I'm hopeful that he gets beyond a practice and we can start the season with him as a backup, because I could see him being a starter if we could see something from him,
Yeah, absolutely. This is a huge year for him. If he gets the opportunity to play and stays healthy and gets to take some notes from Darius Slay and maybe even kick his game to the next level, you never know. He might be able to be the starter the year after this upcoming season. So I couldn't agree with you more. Huge year for Corey Trice.
Yeah. So here's to hoping he stays. But it is hard. The depth we have at defense is a great problem to have.
Yeah.
But quite the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I ended up going heavy on defense, because I just felt like there was more talent there to keep. But we're not done yet, Nick. I don't know who you're going to specialists yet.
Special teams, special plays, special players.
That's it,
No surprises here, James. We've got Chris Boswell at the place kicking spot, Boz for president. Christian Kuntz is going to be snapping him the ball. And then I've got no surprise here with Cam Johnston as the punter. Sad to see Corliss Waitman go. At least he got his payday from Aaron Rodgers before he has to walk out the door. But all reports say that Cam Johnston has been booming it in the OTAs. And so happy to see him removed from that awful injury last year, and excited to see him launch some punts down the field for us.
Yeah, I think that's the only real battle going on in the specialist room this year is Cameron Johnson versus Corliss Waitman. And what a pleasant surprise that was last year. Pittsburgh went out and made the investment to get a good punter for one, which has been such an issue. Presley Harvin III just had a very up and down career and way too many shaked punts. And we had some struggles before him as well. It seemed like Cameron Johnson was going to straighten things out, and then he goes down week 1. Corliss Waitman comes in, and I felt like we didn't really miss a beat with it. I thought Waitman did a really nice job last year. So this could be one of those things that the preseason ends, and you've got 2 starting punters on your roster, and maybe you can steal a 6th or 7th round pick from somebody to give them a punter that they don't have. I'm sure there's plenty of teams that don't have one good punter, and we got 2 right now.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd love to see any increased capital for the draft in Pittsburgh next year. So
yes,
I will take it whenever I can get it and however I can get it.
All right, so before I wrap things up on the show here, is there anything else either one of you would like to speak on?
Well, have we talked, like, what do we think we're going to do with the extra cap that we have?
I mean, personally, I think that a lot of it is going to be used to move up and try to get one of these top quarterbacks.
Okay.
I would not be surprised at all if they package together 3 or 4 picks to try to move up as high as they can in that first round to get their guy. Now, this all depends on how the upcoming college season plays out. You know, for all we know, there might only be 1 or 2, and then there's no chance of moving up high enough anyway if you're winning 9 or 10 games like normal. Especially with the Browns likely to have an extremely high first-round pick, and they have 2 first-round picks. And I think there's another team that has 2 first-round picks who also is likely to need a quarterback. It might be like the Colts or somebody. So you might not be able to get any higher than the number 3 quarterback next year. But on the flip side, if you don't get a chance to do that, you're picking, 13 times in front of a home crowd in Pittsburgh? That's a pretty tremendous thing to add to the party right there. So at least depth players on the way in a major way, but I'm kind of hoping they package it all together to go get an elite quarterback and get us our next Roethlisberger.
Okay.
Yeah, I would love to see us get a quarterback, especially just to have another young guy in that room that can hopefully be that future of the franchise. I also wouldn't hate picking 3 or 4 times in the 3rd round with what we might be able to get with some of those compensatory picks next year. And I believe we got a 3rd in return for George and a later swap too. So we're sitting really nice in the 3rd round. And you can see some really solid players still falling in that 3rd round there. So I definitely wouldn't hate moving up to get a quarterback. I'm just hoping we don't have to sell the farm to do so. Because if we can keep some of that capital and get some of those depth piece guys that can then learn behind some of the guys that we've currently got on the roster and then maybe provide that future star player and be kind of like the Eagles do where they get pieces for the future and let them sit, and then by the time that other guy leaves, they're like, oh cool, you're next guy up. So hopefully we can kind of emulate some of that, but I'm looking forward to the draft in Pittsburgh next year, hoping to go, so maybe we can do some live shows from the draft or something, but
That'd
we'll
be pretty
figure
cool.
that out in the future.
That'd be pretty cool.
Absolutely. Going to be an exciting time, no doubt, to be a Steelers fan, and a little bit more exciting with a new QB in town. So I want to thank both of you for getting up bright and early this morning and joining me on the show. Wouldn't be the same without you. So we're going to wrap this up. So thank you all for following on YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, anywhere you're downloading. We're going to be there for you. So you all have a wonderful day.